shivering, flurry, holes. I knew that in the morning I'll wake up in the shivering cold. It's Spider-Man is always
What's up, YouTube? Thank you for tuning in now and in the future. Happy holidays to you. How you doing? How's everybody doing? Thank you for tuning in now and in the future. Yes. So it's been a minute. It's been a minute since I've been able to come on here and do another video. But I've got a little bit more time. I've got a window of time again. Yes. So, good morning, buenos dias, guten Morgen, and aloha. Aloha from the life coach. I am calling you because I am a life coach and I can coach you. What about these life coaches out here charging $200 and $300 living on somebody's couch? Girl, how you gonna teach me about life and you ain't even got a place to stay? Okay, I'm sorry, but not sorry. You're gonna need to have your stuff together before you can tell me anything. And you want to charge somebody $200 and $300? Girl. And I say girl because these individuals are not grown women. These are girls, okay? They might be physically grown, old hags. But they are stunted in certain areas that warrant the term girl. Let me stop because, I'm not going to knock anyone's hustle. There's some people out there hustling too, I'm telling you. There's legitimate hustles, and then there's some illegitimate hustles, and then there's some low vibration, evil, stinking. Not stinking, but stank. There's a difference between stinking, by the way, other than the spelling. Stinking with an I, that is along the lines of offensive odor or malodorous. But stank, it's a thing. It's a real thing. Stankin' is a whole other level. I'm talking about the stuff that stays up in your nose for hours and days after you've encountered these individuals, right? Stank. And you know what? I learned a lesson. I don't care who they are. If they stank, I don't care if it's in a professional setting. I'm going to keep that shit short. Super short. Telling you. Because a lot of times it's indicative of a severe mental health issue. Okay? And now, when I speak about mental health, there's different kinds of mental health. There's the kind of mental health that the person can't help. It could be caused environmentally, heredity, or a combination, right? But then there's the types of mental health, mental illnesses that are due to people's choices. They're repeatedly choosing a dark path. When people do dark stuff, that mental illness can get them. Okay, I've talked about narcissists and I've talked about sociopath and psychopath. People that feed off of hurting others. And these people may not be in jail. They may not have murdered anyone, But they do murder souls. And some of these people murder their own flesh and blood souls, their own offsprings. And they don't just stop at doing it to their own offspring, right? Like, that's pretty much how they operate. They do it to their spouses, they do it to their neighbors. And, I'm telling you, some of them you can tell. Some of them you can, they stank. And they don't just stank physically, but they stank mentally and spiritually too. Yes. Oh, yes. And people have hustles out here, especially out here in California. This is the sue you and sue me state, right? This is litigation country out here. There's more attorneys here than there is restaurants. Okay? And a lot of people are out here trying to make a buck off of other people. You got a lot of these low bottom, I call them con joffords, cockroaches. All right? They are low bottom feeders, man. Low bottom feeders. They usually live off the system. They know the system very well. They have public assistance. Look, I'm not knocking anybody who's got public assistance because it has its place. There are people that need it, and that are people that are utilizing it properly. But I'm speaking of this sector of the population that uses things to their advantage, and they make a career out of suing organizations and companies. Yes, and they're rampant out here. LA, Los Angeles, Hollywood, Santa Monica, Venice Beach, LA County, Southern California. You best believe it, because it's a lot of money out here. And a lot of these organizations, look, no organization is 100%, right? There's both light and dark. I've talked about this before too, about groups and organizations and even family units. There's both dark and light aspects of any conglomeration of people, be it 3 people in a very basic family unit all the way to millions of people in a country, right? You have both dark and light, but some of these organizations and businesses have a severity of darkness. Okay, there's some real sick stuff going on behind closed doors, and some of them on the outside look really nice, and their frontline staff is really nice people. Like, they don't really all know what's going on. You know what I mean? And some of them may not be able to get out of there right away, and some of them like staying up in there because they've got a whole other agenda too. They're scammers and crooks too, just on a lower level. And like attracts like. So you have people out here that make it a career to sue organizations. They target certain organizations, and they target certain organizations that probably deserve that kind of person. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not here to judge, not my call. But you do have to keep your eyes and ears open, because you may find yourself in the crossfire between somebody who has studied, systematically and strategically studied the vulnerabilities of an organization that you may be involved in, be it professionally, a job that you're there, or maybe you're a member of a certain group. You gotta be careful. You gotta know who you're dealing with. And you might want to do a background check periodically, even if you think you know the group you're dealing with and you think you know the job you're working for the company. You better go out there and do a background check. If you're trying to get on board with a company, you're trying to transition, or you're trying to get a new job, career, look, just how they do background checks on you, you better do background checks on that company. I'm here to tell you. And I'm here to tell you something else. Learn as much as you can about the law. Try to understand as much as you can about the law, especially out here in California. I'm telling you, can save yourself a lot of trouble. You can open up opportunities of things, open doors that wouldn't be open to you. But be very careful, folks. It's all about boundaries. Boundaries and awareness, self-awareness and awareness of your surroundings, just like Sun Tzu in The Art of War. It's all about knowing not just your enemy, but also your environment and also yourself. If you know your enemy, you know your environment, but you don't know yourself, you might end up losing badly because your enemy might be studying your vulnerabilities and your weak spots and exploiting them, especially if you're not aware. You got some things that you haven't resolved within yourself that you're trying to repress and look away on. We all have that, right? Well, guess what? Somebody that might be coming for you might be studying and knowing those things and using them against you. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, happy holidays to you. I know a lot of people don't really feel all that great about the holidays. You know, for me, it's I can take it or leave it. I've celebrated Christmas. I've been to so many Christmas parties and gatherings throughout the years, and you know, I've done up Christmas till I was just all Christmased out. I'm okay with it. I can take it or leave it. This year, I'm just going to play it by ear. So I'm not opposed to going to any Christmas parties. I will be doing gifts for a handful of people, but yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I like I said, I can take it or leave it. I don't get triggered. Some people do get triggered because of, you know, their whatever family situation they have. But yeah, you know, to me, I'm going to enjoy my weeks off. I've got some vacation time coming, and so I look forward to that, to getting some rest, to being able to do a few things in the home here, and to just enjoy the holiday season. Also, I won't be eating a whole this big dinners and stuff where people just eat, and then eat some more. I've done all that too, and you know, I'm kind of past that too. I'm not opposed to eating good food though, but yeah. So yeah, you got to make sure about these people. Make sure to set your boundaries, to work on your boundaries, and reevaluate, reestablish certain boundaries, because like I said, there's people out here that on a bigger level, I'm talking about, you know, business and organizations. There's people that make it a career to sue organizations, and they get houses from it. The woman who gave birth to me, the husband that she married, I call him the step person, to keep things neutral. Well, he had a brother and a sister-in-law, and together they made it a career out of suing companies, and they would study the vulnerabilities, and then they would set up certain situations where they would end up suing the company. And I found out years and years ago they had 6 or 7 particular different lawsuits that they pretty much cashed in. They had a couple of them. They cashed in quite a bit, and it was really, really ugly the way they did things. I tell you, I kept my distance from those people. I really didn't have much to do with any of those people. You know, they weren't really my family anyway. So, but they always managed to have 2 and 3 story homes, really, really nice homes. They didn't have a lot inside of the homes. It wasn't really a home inside. You know, they had just the bare necessity things, but it wasn't somebody that made a home out of the house. But yeah, you know, she was just a part-time bus driver, so you know that wasn't a whole lot of money that they could afford a home like that. He didn't really have a steady job. You know, I think he said one time that he worked construction, but I think he just threw that out there. He may have worked construction at one point, a construction job, but he also sold drugs. He sold drugs mostly to his own family. And again, that probably wasn't a whole lot of money, you know. So the lawsuits were the ones bringing in the moolah, the lawsuits. And these were some really nasty lawsuits, very, very nasty. And it was clear that these were serial litigants. And they would set up certain situations to where, you know, they would be able to sue. And this is how it is. There are people in this country, especially here in this state, that make it a profession. And you have to watch out, because if you just happen to be in the sights of their target, you know, say you might be a staff member of a company that they're looking to try to sue, you know, they're trying to work an angle so they can end up getting a settlement some kind of way. You have to be real careful, and you can get caught up in that. You can get caught up in that. And that also ties into, you got to know what company you're dealing with. Who are you working for? Who are you doing business with? Because if you're dealing with somebody who has a history going back to the 1980s of really, really doing some bad stuff to people, to their own staff people, to their own directors, you know what I'm saying, then it draws those kind of, I call them sewer crabs, bottom level predators. They are predators nonetheless, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Some of them come in old hags, you know, old creepo hags, hags that don't wash or bathe. I'm telling you, they come in all shapes and sizes. And you have to be real careful. You have to be real careful with that, seriously. Yep, so exercising boundaries, you know, protection and security. Yep, try to educate yourself as much as you can on your legal rights, whatever situation you're in. I always tell people, you don't have to become a lawyer, but you do need to learn a lifelong learning. You need to be a lifelong student of the law and the different laws that apply to you and to others in different situations in your life. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. All right. Yeah. I tell you, you know, I'm a pretty sharp dresser. I put time into my appearance, and sometimes people get that confused. You know, they think I'm a rich person or something, because I guess I don't know what it is about me. Maybe the way, of course, I dress a certain way, but you know, I'm not dressing in like super expensive clothes here. You know, I just, my clothes are normal clothes, right? They cost a normal amount of money, but the way I put it together looks really sharp and nice. And I've just, you know, I wear a nice cologne. I don't wear the cheap stuff cologne. I do put a little money into the cologne. You know, I do wear Tom Ford and some of the other ones, but you know, you have to be careful when you're out here doing stuff and you've got things going for you. You have to protect it. You have to really be careful, because there are people that will be envious, and they will hate what they're envious of because they can't have it. Not because they can't really have it, but because they won't have it. They won't do the work for themselves that you're doing. So they look at you and they want to find a way to take it away from you. Even if they can't take it from you and keep it to themselves, they still don't want to see you have it either, even though you've worked for it. So there's that, but you know, that's nothing new. Those are the sewer crabs, you know, those are the con artists. I want to talk about talking about protection and security. I've been doing a math self-study thing, looking to overcome a math phobia, a dislike of math, for quite some time now. And so I'm very happy to report I am over my math phobia. And of course, the math phobia is something very common. When people have a dislike for math, immediately when I talk about math or mention math, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm no good at math. And they kind of recoil, and they kind of just don't want me to talk about it. So, you know, if you ever want to get rid of somebody who's pestering you, start talking about math. But to me, math phobia equals a handicap. And it is a real handicap that can cause you to hemorrhage money that you didn't even know, to leak money that you didn't even know, or to leave money behind on the table that you didn't know. It also keeps certain doors and avenues of opportunity closed to you. Math is in everything. Matter of fact, language and writing began only because of math. We were all at first, our human ancestors were hunter-gatherers. And that means we traveled from place to place, hunting animals and gathering food, gathering crops or, plants and things for food. At some point, we came across fertile valleys and lands where we could farm and plant and stay long term or stay permanently in certain areas. So that's when we conglomerated. We had tribes, then we had cities, and then we had states and nations, right? Well, now we had a new set of problems to deal with. How to divide the food source? Who gets what? A little kid is not going to get as much food source for that day as an adult man, right? It just makes sense. So how do we make sure to divide this? And we also had to practice addition, right? This amount of ears of corn, this amount of wheat, this amount of cattle. We also had to practice subtraction, right? If I give you 10 of my cows, how much wheat will you give me? So then we had to understand a barter system, right? A fair exchange. What is a fair exchange? So in that process, we also had to document. We also now we had a problem of recording. Like, how do we keep up with this? So that's where writing came into place, because our ancestors would take, in certain areas of the world, they would bake these clay tablets, and they would take, let's say you had a certain amount of, you had 3 ears of corn. Well, they used that to imprint on those clay tablets those objects. And then that imprint symbolized that amount of those objects. Now, at that time, the human mind attributed numbers to objects, and these were attributes. They were not entities of their own like we're dealing with today. So 10 cows or 10 bulls was a different word than 10 ears of corn. And we still kind of have these kinds of things in our world, like a pair of gloves. A pair means two, right? So at that point, we learned to count on our hands. And that's where we come up with our number system. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We count on our fingers. That's 1-to-1 counting. So we started with 1-to-1 counting, right? Now, in some parts of the world, they started with 0. 0 and then 1, 2, 3, all the way to 9. Because 10 was seen as a man-made number. It had the digit 1 and then 0 for the next level up, for the teens, and then the hundreds and the thousands and so forth, right? And it was a really big problem. And back then, we didn't have just secular math. We had the symbolic math that we transcended to. The symbol, the impression, then became a symbol of X amount of corn, or X amount of cattle, or X amount of wheat. At that time also, we had needs. The more we conglomerated, we had needs for protection. So we needed soldiers and military, right? So these soldiers had to get paid. And also, we had further distances we would travel because we conglomerated and grew into cities, right? So now we needed something. We needed currency. We needed the idea of currency that represents 10 bulls or 10 ears of corn, right? Because a soldier couldn't carry 10 whole bulls around in his pocket. So, and he may not have had a farm or anything to keep those on. So, how do we now compensate this person for their protection, for their military protection, for their security service, right? Because we had tribes and other tribes would come and war and take over. And, this is part of how people are. And nations, Europe went and enslaved many, colonized and enslaved many different nations and people, right? Felt that they had a right to other people's lands and so forth and such. But before we go to that level of it, that's when we had coins, or seashells. At first we had different things like seashells. So then the seashells, 10 seashells were imprinted on those clay tablets, and then that, whatever that imprint was the symbol and the meaning for 10 shells, for example, right? Which represented a value of X amount, right? So we went from 1-to-1 counting to now symbolic math. And this is where basic arithmetic plays. Adding, subtraction, multiplying, and dividing. And from there, language started. So because of math, we have languages and writing. So everything, when you text somebody, all of that is due to math. All that boils down to numbers. Because those symbols then progressed and evolved into alphabets and letters, which then evolved into words and whole languages, right? So everything is based on math. Every little thing is based on math. So having a math phobia, having an aversion for math, not really liking math, not really, oh no, I'm no good at that, and leaving it at that, it really handicaps people. And a lot of people are like that because they haven't really been taught about math. They've been taught the secular part, 1 + 1 = 2 type of thing, and they've never been shown how it ties into their everyday life. They've never been able to build a personal bridge of meaning and practical use, because there's a lot of practical use. And number two, you're never taught how to actually study math. You can't just read the examples and expect yourself to know it. You can't do that. You have to practice the problems. But the problem with practicing problems is most of the math textbooks don't have enough examples, they don't have enough problems, and they only have answers for certain odd numbered problems, and then that's all you get is the answer. You're not shown how that answer is done, or even to a much less extent why that is the right answer. So, we're heading into mathematical proofs here, which is a little bit more advanced, but still, if you're somebody like me who's doing mathematical self-study and who's working to not only overcome math phobia, but to actually love math, which I do, I really do love math. It's something to keep in mind. Can you mathematically prove why 1 + 1 = 2 is the correct answer? And of course, you would say, what? It's self-evident. 1 + 1 = 2. What do you mean? But that's the thing. Mathematically being able to write a proof as to why that is correct is a next step. And that is the step, that is the level where you're able to have a much stronger mathematical intuition. There is such thing as math intuition. It's very, very real. And don't forget, folks like Pythagoras and Euclid, they practiced math and saw math as a type of spirituality. It wasn't just secular benefits of transaction and record keeping and currency and things like that. Symbolically, and at that level, at that point in history, numbers were no longer seen as attributes. We were no longer just counting on our hands and fingers. Now we were dealing with, 100, 1,000, 1,000,000. So you didn't have 1,000,000 fingers to count on, right? So how do we work these numbers now? So this is where we had symbolic math, right? This is where things became symbolic, and this is where we had the beginnings and the birth of language and writing. So, me as a writer, that was when I found that out, that was pretty mind blowing, but it makes sense because even today in the Hebrew language, especially in the Kabbalistic philosophy, in the Western Esoteric Tradition, we have something called gematria. And gematria basically is an interchange in dealing with relationships and permutations between the Hebrew alphabet and numbers. Each alphabet letter represents a number. Again, this traces back to when we imprinted X amount of objects into the clay tablets, which became a symbol, which then evolved into a letter. You see? So you see the connection, right? And this is all across the board. You know, the English language has borrowed a lot from other cultures, ancient cultures that had their beginning just like this. And you see this beginning in every major culture. This is how language and writing starts, from math. The need to solve the problem of rationing out our common goods and collective resources to each other, and who gets what and how much, right? Again, a 5-year-old kid is not going to get as much food rationed out to it on a daily basis as an adult man. It just makes plain sense. But beyond that, how do we ration it out? Well, we got to count, right? Well, how do we count? You see? So math is intertwined in everything. There are books like Real Life Math for Dummies that pulled all this together for everyday shopping, for saving, for retirement, for paying the mortgage, for paying the rent. All of this stuff has personal meaning, and it can have personal meaning to you if you pull it in and build that bridge. And these are things that you're not taught in school. Most of the math teachers and professors, they're not going to teach you that. They might not even know how to teach that themselves. So one of the things I learned is pull a personal meaning and see how the practical value of math can affect you in your everyday life. Because if you look, you're going to find math is everywhere. Math is in music. Your favorite song, that's all math. If they didn't have particular mathematical systems for creating the music, you would hear nothing but chaos. So math is really like one big symphony. There are very fascinating relationships between numbers and numbers with each other. One of the things is the Collat's conjecture. The Collat's conjecture is a math mystery that no one has been able to solve yet. It perplexes mathematicians and everyday people like myself all over the world. And it has been so since 1937, when the German mathematician Collatz came up with the Collat's conjecture. Thing is, with the Collat's conjecture, a basic elementary school kid can understand it. So don't worry, you don't have to be a mathematician to understand the Collat's conjecture. If you ever want to Google that, it's C as in Charlie, O double L as in Larry, let me start again. C as in Charlie, O as in Larry, double L. God dang. C as in Charlie, O as in Otis, double L as in Larry, A as in Adam, T as in Timothy, Z as in zebra. The Collat's conjecture. All right, so the Collat's conjecture is one of the most famous unsolved problems in mathematics. But a grade schooler can understand it. So a 6-year-old can understand this. All right, so there's only 2 rules with this one. If the number is even, you divide it by 2. If the number is odd, you multiply it by 3, and then you add 1. And if you follow those 2 rules, no matter what number you start off with, the sequence of numbers will always terminate at the number 1. Okay? So, let's test it out. Let's choose a positive integer, 5. And let's test the conjecture. So 5 is odd, right? So the rule for odd is to multiply by 3 and add 1. So we multiply 5 times 3, which is 15. We add 1, which is 16. Okay, now we're going to apply the rules to this one. Well, since this one is an even one, 16 is even, all we have to do now is divide by 2, which is 8. 8 turns out to be even, we divide by 2, which is 4. 4 is an even number again, we divide by 2, we get 2. 2 is even, and we divide by 2, and guess what? We get 1. There you go. And this is for any number you pick. Let's pick another number. Let's pick an odd one. Let's pick 13. Okay, 13. Thirteen is odd, so the rule for odd ones is to multiply by 3 and add 1. So 3 times 13 is 39, plus 1 is 40. So then we divide 40 by 2 because it's even, so that's 20. We divide 20 by 2 because it's even, we get 10. We divide 10 by 2 because it's even, we get 5. Now 5 is odd, so the rule for odd ones is to multiply by 3 and add 1, right? So 5 times 3 is 15, add 1 is 16. Guess what? Here we go. 16 is even, if we divide it by 2, gives us 8. 8 is even, we divide it by 2, gives us 4. 4 is even, we divide by 2, equals 2. 2 is even, we divide by 2, equals 1. And you can do this with any number. 34, 64, 88, 15, any number. You just keep applying those two rules, and at some point it's going to terminate at the number 1. And there's all kinds of things like this. There's all kinds of mysteries, fascinating mysteries, like if you really think about it, what is going on here? There is an underlying structure in the universe, because this isn't just on paper. We're talking about this symbolizing physical reality. There's something in our construct of the physical world that is mathematically precise. And you'll see this everywhere in the way trees grow. You have the Fibonacci sequence, right? You have the golden mean ratio, and you see it everywhere. You see it in architecture, you see it in art, you hear it in music, you see it in the plants that's growing around you, you see it in the way the city streets are built, you see it in our government, you see it in our literature, you see it in our psychology, you see it in our films and movies, the way movie scripts are written. And again, everything involves language. It involves computer systems. The very cell phone in your hand would not exist if it wasn't for math. Math is the root of everything. And that's why when we came along, by the time we had Pythagoras, this was seen as, the numbers were seen as God, because they rule all of reality. And these weren't just mathematicians that knew secular. No, they saw a deeper and experienced and practiced a much deeper reality of numbers and math. We are so far removed from that. But deities at one point were numbers. That's why that movie, The Matrix, where all of a sudden the Matrix just turns into zeros and ones, that's basically how it is. That's basically the core of our world, both physically and mentally. Here's the cool part about math. Scientists, mathematicians, we all have yet to figure out whether math is something we invented or something that exists on its own. That's the big mystery right there. The big, huge enigma about math is that we can't decide whether it's something we've invented or something that exists out on its own. But it sure does fit perfectly when we use it to study and manipulate reality. Scientifically, math is precise. It is precise. But there's still the question of, did we invent this? Or did we discover it? The jury's still out on it. And here's another thing. The deeper you get into math, at some point you will transcend from objectivity to subjectivity. Math extends into everything. In business, everything is math. Even the weather changes, the seasons. They're affected by the movements of celestial objects like the Earth and the other planets in our solar system. And they have mathematical movements that are precise. So it's really fascinating. And this is the thing. Our ancestors, when they settled and when they started growing crops and practicing agriculture, they worshiped the sun and the moon because without these things, they wouldn't have food. So this was a matter of life or death. Understanding the patterns and being able to discover mathematical patterns of how the sun moves and rotates and how the earth moves and rotates was the difference between life or death. Because remember, in the winter, crops don't grow. We don't realize that because we can just go to the store and get food anytime, anywhere. We have the money. We can, it doesn't matter if it's winter. But this time of year was really crucial for our ancestors because crops weren't growing. It was too cold. So if you weren't able to grow enough crops in the summer that you could store, you didn't understand the seasons and when to plant the seed and when to till and all of that and when to harvest, then you could die. You and your family could really, your life depended on it, you see. So these people didn't worship thinking that the moon and the sun was people like them. They had anthropomorphized mythologies, but they were based on math. They knew when to plant, when to plant the crops, and certain plants only grow under certain conditions, So all of this is math. Even when you're cooking something, when you're cooking your Thanksgiving dinner, or you're cooking your Christmas dinner, or whoever's cooking the Christmas dinner that you're going to eat, or whatever it is you're going to eat, it's math. Because if you don't measure out a certain amount of sugar or a certain amount of flour or butter or whatever, there is not going to be any cake, right? If you just put any old things together, there's no telling what'll come up. And there's people out there that quote unquote cook like that. And, it is not good. It doesn't turn out good. So math is everywhere. You just have to open your eyes like Neo in the Matrix. And it's very fascinating. I recommend a book called Constructing the Universe by Michael Schneider, Schneideder. The math constructing. Let me Google this guy, Michael Schneider. And it is Constructing the Universe, a beginner's guide to constructing. I'm trying to Google it. A beginner's guide to constructing the universe, the mathematical archetypes of nature, art, and science, a voyage through the journey of 1 through 10. Absolutely amazing. It is so gonna open your eyes up. You're gonna see the mathematical geometric patterns in flowers, in architecture everywhere around you, in the streets and how they're built, in the grocery store. It is everywhere is math. When you get your paycheck, there's math there. And you're going to want to know your math so you can get paid correctly, right? When you're paying taxes and what you're getting paid. Some people don't believe in paying taxes. I believe in paying taxes because I like my freedom and I like my peace. But some people don't. They want to skip over that. But hey, that's on them. But yeah, math is a great thing. So I basically am going to take a break right now, and then we'll be back, and I'll tell you about how I have overcome my math phobia, and for whoever is interested in that, because math phobia equals math handicap, and you really don't want to be handicapped now. I just don't think that's a good. I don't think it's a good way to be, because why would you close yourself off from the countless opportunities you would have, the countless doors that would be open to you if you were overcoming your math phobia, and more importantly, cultivating and developing and exercising your math intuition. It's not about knowing the right answers. Yes, that has its place, but that's not where you want to stop. You don't want to just know how to get the right answer, but you want to know why, right? And that's where mathematical proofs and real analysis comes in. But it's something to think about. And a lot of people think that you have to wait until you get into proofs. You don't have to wait to get into proofs. You can get into mathematical proofs as early as now. But of course, it's another one of those things that take time and practice. And you want to have a regular scheduled routine for practicing math, no matter where you're at. Even if you say, look, I don't know anything about calculus, topology, that's way above my head. Okay, start back at square one, basic arithmetic. All right, I'm going to play a song right quick for a break, and then I shall be back.
Battery 60%. Connected to Galaxy A715G and BSK2OP IR80K6A.
Here we go, vertigo, video vertigo, test for echo. Here we go, in slow-mo, video vertigo, test for echo. Test for echo. Sensory screen. Camera curves over caved-in cars. Creatures would be desperados. Clutch at plausible deniability. Don't touch that dial. Denial until the show gets trial on TV. Here we go. Video. Test for echo. Sense of confidence. Miles of yellow tape, silhouetted chalk lines.
All right, I'm back. I've got a short break. I just had to drink something for my throat. I've been talking for almost an hour. Anyway, I'm back. So, topic, math phobia, math self-study. Improving yourself and growing. One of the things that's always held me back in life was my fear and aversion for all things math. And it was because I didn't have good teachers. Excuse me. They never teach you how to study math. You don't study math the same way you study other things. You're not going to be able to just read the examples and know how to do it. You have to keep practicing. Math is hard for everyone. Math is hard for mathematicians, math professors, math whiz. It's just as hard for them as it is for you and me. Only difference is they've developed their mathematical thinking and problem-solving abilities. It's like a muscle. It's like weightlifting for the mind. But I'm not just talking about the secular math of 1 + 1. I'm talking about the symbolic and the next level up, sacred math. It is a real path to empowerment on all levels, financially, physically, being fit and in shape and healthy, that's all math. Diet, nutrition, that's all math. Knowing the amount of calories you're taking in every day, that's math, that's numbers. Exercise, knowing the amount of reps, knowing the amount of time you're running or you're jogging or you're walking or you're cycling or you're lifting weights, it's all math. Your favorite songs that you're listening to, this right here is all math. You have to be on beat. Otherwise, it's just all chaotic noise. So math is everywhere. And there's no need to be afraid of it. There's no need to dislike it. You just haven't been shown what it really is. But once you see a glimpse of it, I guarantee you, you're not going to get past it. You're going to want to know more. You're going to want to explore more because it gives you power. And it also gives you the benefits that you can take to the bank, literally. So not only is it exciting and fascinating, there's a lot of mysteries, a lot of fascinating mysteries with numbers and their relationships with each other. Like the number 1. This Collat's conjecture, no matter what numbers you start off with, you follow the 2 rules, you will always, always, always end up with 1. The 1, the unity, the absolute, right? But the thing is, the deeper you get into the characteristics in the sacred symbology of numbers, and how they're visually depicted, because that's all geometry is numbers depicted visually. A circle is a 0, right? A point is 1. Then a line is 2. A triangle is 3. A square is 4. And so forth and so on. Pentagon is 5 points. That's the number 5 symbolized visually, right? And you can see these in your mind's eye. Well, what do they mean? Symbolically, as we just said, the point is the unity, the 1. But the point is inside of the circle, right? It's inside of a 0, the no thing. And see, this ties into a lot of the philosophies. Again, philosophy is very much tied to math. A lot of people don't put that together, but math and philosophy, which is very much tied into spirituality and later on what people call religion, all that ties together. All of it ties together. 2 symbolizes, among other things, and I'm just being very simple about it because, if you get that book, Constructing the Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe, you're going to see a lot more about that sacred math and the archetypal meanings. But 2 means duality. 3 means a third point of view or a higher perspective. And if you look at it, you can visualize a line with 2 points, 1 point on each end of the line, and then a point above, which creates a triangle. And it's a broader perspective, a higher perspective between the 2 opposites, right? The 2 polar opposites. And this right here is also known as a trinity. So if you're somebody from the West that has been raised in a Christian tradition where there's that trinity, the Father, the Holy Ghost, and the Son, right? All of these, and then you go on to psychology. You have Freud's id and superego and ego, or the mother, the father, and the child. So again, you have these deep embedded sacred meanings everywhere. Nikola Tesla, I'm sure you know who Nikola Tesla is, right? Well, this guy, he was obsessed and he was convinced that 3, 6, and 9 were very, very powerful numbers. And there were certain things he did according to 3, 6, and 9. And if you look for 3, 6, and 9, you will see it everywhere. You're going to see it everywhere. So one of the things I recommend, I know I'm a book person, I'm recommending all kinds of books. I recommend Mathematical Sorcery, Revealing the Secrets of Number by Calvin Clausen. This is a mathematics professor. Okay, there's a little bit of math in here, I'm not going to lie to you, but it's not overwhelming. This is not anything that the average person can't grasp, okay? Seriously, it is just one of the most amazing books. And this is where where I get my information about how we started as hunter-gatherers and how math came to be. How did we start, math? And here's the thing. Animals, chimpanzees, dogs, and cats, they have an awareness of math to a very, very primal, well, I won't say primal, but a very basic level, okay? But when you're talking about ants or even the dung beetle, that dung beetle uses very precise mathematical things in its little roach brain that are parallel to how certain celestial objects move out in space. They have determined that. Yeah. A freaking roach, a dung beetle, a roach that digs in shit and rolls a big shit ball in front of itself and lays its eggs in it. Yeah. These roaches that we squash, they know math. They might not be doing it the way we do, but there are mathematical precisions in their movements and in their actions that are in line with the celestial movements of the planets in our solar system and even in the galaxy. Yeah. So dogs, cats, they have some measure of math. They might not be counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but my cats, they know which food bowl has more food in it and which ones don't. Like which ones where they can see the bottom of it and they know that there's not that much food. They know the difference between that. So that's math. Even babies have a type of math. Math is built and hardwired into us. So understand you're naturally a mathematician. It's just whether or not you open yourself up to it and utilize it and become aware and cultivate it even further. But we're all mathematicians, whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not. Mathematician does not have to be anybody that has a degree in math. It doesn't have to be anybody that teaches math. A mathematician can be anybody that enjoys and practices math problems on a regular basis. Okay, so in that sense, and in that vein, we're going to move ahead. So math study, something that's helped me, of course, is like I told you, to make the connections, the personal meanings. How can I pull this into my everyday life? And that's the attitude and approach you want to have with that. Also, I checked in with myself and I said, hey, I'm not really good at math. So I'm going to go back to the basics, 1 + 1. So I got a book called All the Math You'll Ever Need by Stephen Slavin, I believe. All the Math You'll Ever Need, Stephen Slavin. And this really ties in basic arithmetic. He touches also a little bit on algebra, some geometry, measuring the area, the perimeter of a base, and all that. And this can help in countless of ways, whether you're renovating your home, you're fixing up your home, or if you're renting, if you're having to pay certain expenses, like you can really start calculating, okay, well, how much does this cost? Are they justified in charging me X amount for rent? Or if you own a home, you've got contractors coming in, how much should this cost? Are they justified in charging me XYZ to come out and fix the water heater, or to remodel my bathroom, or to put new countertops in my kitchen? Because, if you aren't able to do that, you might get ripped off, because a lot of these companies bank on you not knowing the math, being afraid, and using your math phobia and your math aversion against you. So you might come to realize that you're able to save and hold on to a lot of money because of your newfound math skills. Or you might be able to cash in on money too, right? If you have investments, that's where calculus comes in. And, shouldn't be afraid of calculus, because it's all a progression. If you have to go back to square one, literally, 1 + 1 = 2, do so. And solidify your ability to add and subtract. And solidify your ability to work with fractions, division, and multiplication. And then you go further. You work with square roots. And you go a little further and further and further. You work with geometry. You work with algebra. Euclid, this is the type of geometry that most of us are taught in high school and probably also in college, maybe university level. Euclidean geometry basically deals with a two-dimensional surface. So, a flat triangle, there's no volume or depth to it, or a circle, right? Now, when you're talking about non-Euclidean geometry, things change, because now you're dealing with shapes that are more realistic, like spheres. So the circle turns into a sphere, and that's the shape of our Earth. It's the shape of a lot of things in our Earth plane, right? We don't have flat circles around, we have spheres. Same thing with triangles, squares, and so forth, right? Well, math, when you're talking about spheres, if you imagine a flat circle, you can draw a line through that circle, and it will be a straight line. But now if you draw another line intersecting like a cross across that line, you have one horizontally and then you do one vertically, both of those are still straight lines. And then when you draw lines diagonally between those two lines and you keep going, they're all straight lines, right? You imagine a pizza, right? When you have these slices, right? But now when you're doing that with a sphere, those lines now curve. And so the angles and the relationships that were on a flat Euclidean circle or flat Euclidean geometry are going to be very different than non-Euclidean, which is a sphere. So you have symbolic math. I would call that symbolic, which is the one on the 2D flat plane. And then you have the more physics-based mathematics, right? That are more reflective of our real world. But both of those really have their place, because things like number theory and the theoretical parts of math are used for real physical results. I'll give you a hard-hitting example. The cell phone in your hand, the computer in front of you, the laptop, your television, all that's based on theoretical math as well as non-theoretical math. And once again, like I said earlier, the jury's still out whether we have yet to determine if it's something we have made up or if it's actually something we discovered. So that right there is the big enigma for me. That is the big mystery for me. You know, math is one big enigma. It is a mystery. There's a lot of, we can determine truth through math. And that's another thing. We can determine real truth through math and logic. But math got its start through the need of us coming together collectively and using our resources collectively. And that's why language is here. Writing. Writing is because of math. So, yeah, math study, self-study, it's like anything else. If you can learn how to dance, if you can learn how to play an instrument, if you learn how to type, all these things require repeated practice over time. And this is the same thing. Working mathematical equations, start from the beginning, start from where your competency is, and work your way up. And this is where you get solution guides. This is a solution guide here. It's a self-teaching guide. The thing I love about it is it doesn't just give you the answers, it shows you how they're worked out and why that's the right answer, you see. Of course, it doesn't have any mathematical proofs in there. You know, it's just basic arithmetic with a little bit of algebra, a little bit of calculus in there. Not too much, though, because it kind of just stays with the basic arithmetic. But this is real-life applications that you can get, that you can use immediately from day one. I myself, you know, I'm a little bit further ahead. I'm at the calculus level. I also have worked with proofs. And I do dabble in some of the other ones like topology, and I also dabble in differential equations, probability statistics. Not very efficient at those levels yet, but you want to have a mixture of super easy math problems that you're working on, ones that are medium challenging, and then throw some challenging ones in there. Challenge yourself. And you have to go through the struggle. Don't just look at the answer right away and then work it out. Let yourself struggle a little bit, okay? That is the key. Math is hard for everyone, and there are going to be times, low points is what we call them, where nothing makes sense, it's completely beyond you, and nothing's registering. That's when it's time to take a break, either go on to something else or go drop down to some easy math problems. Okay, drop down to some easy math problems so you can keep yourself psyched up. Okay, and you know, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day. You don't have to be at this for hours and hours. But look, you're gonna waste away hours and hours looking at your Facebook and at your Instagram or at television, flipping through the television when there's nothing good on. You're gonna sit there at least 15, 20 minutes flipping through until you finally either just settle on something that you wouldn't ordinarily watch, or you go off and do something else that is equally as wasteful with your time. So why not set a little bit of time, 15, 20 minutes, do some math problems. So the solution guides are key. You can get solution guides anywhere. They're not expensive, as you see here. You can get them used off of Amazon, off eBay, $3.76 with free shipping. Come on now. That's less than a cup of coffee. Okay, that is less than a cup of Starbucks coffee. That's less than a pack of cigarettes. That's less than a whole, a whole lunch. You're gonna spend more than that on lunch or on dinner. So that's what I do. I get the solution guides. I get the different solution guides off Amazon and other places. I get them used. I don't ever buy new. Partly because some of the used ones have writing inside of them where somebody has already gone through some of that stuff and they have extra pieces of info that can really work to your advantage. But Schaum's Outlines is another one. This one here is the pre-calculus, fully solved problems. And these things cover every type of, in this case, pre-calculus problems that you would encounter on any kind of course or test or graduate exam. And you can go in there and work those problems and let yourself struggle through it. Let yourself think a little bit. Give yourself a little bit of a struggle with them, you know, not too much. And then go look at the answers and match what you have. And then see where you went wrong. It's not just about having the right answer, but you want to know how to get that right answer. Okay. And the next thing you want to do while you're doing this, you always want to have in the back of your mind, how can I pull this into my everyday life? Because you can. You just have to think a little bit because you're not used to that. We're not used to abstract thinking in our everyday life. But that doesn't mean you can't hone in on it and exercise it like a muscle. Okay? And, if you get tired of working equations, take a few days off. If you get stuck, take some time off. Work some other problems or go do something else. Sleep on it. Take a nap or sleep on it. Take a couple of days and then get back to it, right? So, that's how I do that. And I mix it up. Like I said, I'll drop down to some basic arithmetic or some basic algebra. I'll be working with binomials or polynomials, and then sometimes I'll switch it up and go work with integrals and derivatives, so forth and so on, right? And it's an everyday thing. Every day I do at least. Sometimes I only do 3 problems, and these might be problems that I've done before, but I just keep working through those same thinking patterns because that's really what math is. It's patterns. It's nothing but patterns. This is the book I had mentioned earlier, A Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe, the Mathematical Archetypes of Nature, Art, and Science. This is really going to help you see math in nature, in art, and in science. Everywhere. And this is really mind-blowing. I love this book. I read and reread and photo read this book all the freaking time because it brings order to my universe. It reminds me, hey, this is all mathematically constructed and ordered. There is an order to the world. There's an order to the mind. There is an order to everything. You ever have problems pulling math into the everyday world? Get this book. It is a gem. It is an absolute gem. I wish I had this book early on when I was a kid, because I would have eaten this book up. I would have made so many better grades. I would not have had to work to overcome the math trauma that these dumbass teachers did to us. Because they didn't even know. They were just glorified babysitters. So this is an excellent book. I recommend. Again, it's $6.59. It's $5, $6, $7. Again, it's not a lot of money here, right? And you're worth it. If you're going to invest in yourself, do this. This is one of the things you want to do. It doesn't matter what you do in life. Let's say you want to do a career change, or you want to do a job change, or you just don't want a job at all. Maybe you're somebody begging out there. You still want to utilize math knowledge. You really, really want to. Earlier, I talked about law and legal things. Well, this ties in with law. This ties in with law to a huge degree, because law, going to law school, you're not necessarily learning like you would other subjects where you're learning the information and then you're regurgitating it back on a test. Law school is not like that. What you're being taught is to think like a lawyer, okay? And there is a logic to it. Logic. Well, guess what? Logic is math. When you're learning mathematical proofs, logic all the way. So law at the root of law and government is math. Once again, math is at the root of everything. It's inside you. You are math. And as far as the occult is concerned, I'm going to give you an example from the Western Esoteric Tradition, but this applies all across the board. There's just different cosmologies, in different sectors of the world. The Western Esoteric Tradition, which is the one that I got my start in as far as the occult is concerned, we're talking about the Kabbalistic tree of life. And as you see, the spheres there's 10 spheres. Count them on both hands, right? That is not arbitrary. The Sefer Yetzirah says 10, not 9, not 11, 10. And then you see the lines connecting the spheres? They are mathematically and geometrically precise. These are not just arbitrary lines drawn any kind of way. This whole visual right here has so much information embedded in it, so much meaning and deeper levels of meaning that are mathematically precise. So you're talking about philosophy that is mathematically precise. What? A lot of people have never even heard of this, but it exists. This is not the only one, okay? You know, I could spend hours and hours showing you the same principles and the same patterns in the Eastern philosophies, like the I Ching, for example. The I Ching, prime example. You have computers that are binary, right? Our computers, our cell phones are based on binary code, assembler language, zeros and ones, right? That is the only language your computer understands. When you type in such and such to your friend and you send that over and hit send, all of that is translated to a specific series of zeros and ones. Each character is a sequence of zeros and ones. So the character A, which is ASCII, we call that ASCII in the computer world, is a particular sequence of zeros and ones, and that one is different than the letter B and then the letter C. So all these commands you're typing in when you're texting somebody, when you're looking at Facebook, when you're scrolling and surfing, when you're watching Netflix, all that is masses of information of different sequences of zeros and ones. Well, when you look at the I Ching, the trigrams of the I Ching, the 64 trigrams, the different combinations of the trigrams, that there's 64 of them, well, they're all a combination of straight lines and broken lines. It's just two things. It's a whole line and then there's broken lines. That's it. Zeros and ones. And of course, remember the number 64. Well, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with 64-bit computer technology and multiples of that, right? You have 32, which is half of 64, and then you have 128, which is twice of 64. But again, do you see the parallels? Do you see the correspondences? I Ching is a philosophy. It's also a spirituality that people have practiced and continue to practice. I Ching is also part of the Western Esoteric Tradition as well as the Eastern, right? But do you see what I'm trying to show you here? Math. It is deeply entrenched in everything. You cannot get away from it. All this time you've been living and not seeing. You've been thinking that it has no value to your everyday practical life when it has everything to do with your everyday practical values of life and what you can and can't do with it. Everything. When you're talking about compound interest, the rule of 72, that isn't just an arbitrary number there. That is not an arbitrary number. The rule of 72, you're talking about compound interest, when you're talking about investing, an aggregation of money, that number has special characteristics that you might want to know about because you can take that literally to the bank. But yes, so let me show you one more book, or maybe two or three more. This is by Calvin Clausen. I think I mentioned it before. Mathematical Sorcery, Revealing the Secrets of Numbers. Absolute gem. I absolutely say get this book. Get this book. It will open your eyes to so many things. And it will help you build that bridge into making personal meaning of whatever math, self-study, or if you're having to go back to school, or you're in school, or you're having to do licensing and there's a lot of math involved. This is definitely a really great one. One of the books I also recommend is Photo Reading. It is a 5-step system. It is not speed reading, so don't get it twisted. It is not speed reading. You're taking pictures of the pages. You are downloading entire books, entire texts. You can also do photo reading with online PDFs. You can also do photo reading with videos that you're watching on YouTube. You can photo read through audio, newspapers, magazines, whatever have you, okay? But there's a system to it, right? You're downloading entire books. So in this case, you would be downloading entire math texts into your neurophysiology, and that includes those solution and answer guides, those step-by-step answer guides, especially them. Because if you're photo reading, some of these guides have over 3,000 problems and solution answers to them. So if you're photo reading that and storing that into your subconscious, and then you're using specific types of tools to trigger and activate that information to your conscious surface for whatever stated purpose, whether it's a test or whether you're doing self-study or whatever the case is, now you've got a whole lot to work with, and you're cultivating your mind to already be primed and prepped to do the math problems. And I'm telling you from experience, it definitely skyrockets your mathematical intuition, and it can do that for any body of information, any subject or discipline. It really works well with how-to books for behavior changes, acquiring new skills, but it can also work with academic endeavors as well as photo reading fiction novels. I have photo read the book Fight Club, and I definitely was able to draw from my photo reading of that novel in my everyday life. I was able to reflect on some of the parallels of what was going on in the novel. For example, the narrator, the unnamed narrator of Fight Club novel, had an existential crisis. He was disillusioned with the world and the state of things that he experienced. And I think we all have that to some point or another, be it when we are on the job or in relationships or with ourselves. We get to that point at some point or another, different phases of disillusionment, frustration, and maybe a little crazy too, right? But anyway, photo reading, again, this is not a very expensive book. You don't need to take the whole course. I know there's a whole course and workshop and seminars out there. Hey, if you want to take them for extra measure, fine. But you just need the book. And the book, it's not hard to learn, but the hardest part is letting go of your preconceived notion of learning. This is a different way of learning and taking in information, processing it, and utilizing it in a practical way. And a lot of people don't understand it because in their mind, oh, that's speed reading. And how are you going to speed read through math books? No, this is not speed reading. You can use speed reading to some extent, probably not for math, because in math, you still got to stop and work and practice the exercises. And you don't want to speed through that. You want to be able to focus and take your time working those problems over and over again. But like I said, when you do something called syntopic photo reading, and what syntopic means, it means you're photo reading books that are all on the same topic. So let's say you want to overcome your math phobia. So you get a book called Overcoming Your Math Phobia by Calvin Clausen. And then you get another book called Photo Reading. And then you get another book called, you get an answer and solution of pre-calculus, Schaum's outlines for pre-calculus, and that thing has like 734 pre-calculus problems that are worked out step by step with the answers. Okay? You photo read 3 or 4 of those kinds of books on a regular basis. You do the steps to trigger and activate. You might mind map a couple of things. Maybe you'll mind map some of the the examples there. You work some of the problems, and as time goes by, you feel yourself not only more confident and natural with it, but your sense of inner math intuition is evolving and growing because you've downloaded all kinds of books, you see, on that subject. So one of the things that I do, I might be working at a pre-calculus level, which basically pre-calculus is an umbrella for simple arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and some trigonometry, right? So pre-calculus covers all those basic areas, right? And I might be at that level right now working on that. Well, I'm also photo reading calculus and calculus 2 and multivariate calculus, topology, not all at once, of course, but you're making these layers because no matter what math you're working on, whether it's simple arithmetic or you're working on highly advanced proofs, all of it comes together. You're going to get good all across the board. You're going to be that much better off all across the board. It's just like tarot cards. If you're working with tarot cards, whatever way you're working with tarot cards with, you're going to get good all across the board with tarot cards. And this is the same thing with math. So, I think I've probably scared away a lot of people talking about math today, and that's okay, because this is me, and if you don't like it, you know what you can do, right? But calculus is the touchstone math for all the other maths and for science. So if you remember one thing, how high or how far do you want to go with math? That's up to you. You don't have to go into every single type of math. But I would say work your way up to where you have a solid understanding of calculus. And I'm not talking about where you know how to do the problems and then a year from now or 5 or 10 years from now you have no idea what you're looking at. Nope. I want you to have a locked down solid foundation of calculus to where even 10 years from now you can look at that and say, oh yeah, I know what that is. That's a derivative. I know how to solve that problem, right? So that's where we're at with that, because that calculus is going to open the door to anything. If you're trying to go to graduate school, you're trying to go back to school, you're trying to get your schooling, whether it's business, whether it's philosophy, whether it's some kind of medical training, some kind of computer IT, especially computer IT and medical, law, whatever it is, you're going to be faced with calculus. Whether you're doing personal investing for yourself, calculus. Calculus is the touchstone math. It is the gateway to all of it, to physics, to chemistry, to biology, all of it. Philosophy, psychology. Now, some of these degrees and courses, you might not be required to take calculus, but I think you should be, because it is the touchstone gateway. It opens up so many more doors, and it makes you that much more competent. So that's where we're at. I hope you've had a great time as I have talking about mathematics. I'm going to make some more videos on mathematics. Are you excited? Don't you just love it? I'll be making some more videos about mathematics. All right. And maybe some physics too. I have calculus-based physics solution guides that I really enjoy working through. You know, it's never been this fun before. It's never been this fun, but get yourself a self-study corner or a self-study room. And, you know, you can start with some of these books that I've mentioned. This photo reading will make your life a lot easier. But once again, it's not speed reading, okay? And a lot of people don't understand the approach, you know? So when they try it with the old ways of thinking and the old ways of learning, well, they might have mixed results, and they might say, oh, this is a scam, it doesn't work. Oh, it works. It's just that you, number one, probably didn't follow all the 5 steps correctly. And number 2, you're still approaching it from your old way of thinking and how to learn. And that's the problem a lot of places, you know, learning institutions have, is they don't teach you how to learn. So the responsibility rests on you. How to learn. Matter of fact, I know I said this was going to be the last book, but here's another book. This one here, How to Read a Book. Don't let the simple title fool you. There's stuff in there that you were never ever taught in any learning institution. So it goes into how to read and study science, math books, as opposed to history and philosophy. These are all different ways of studying and approaching these subjects, these types of subjects and disciplines. So, yeah, I don't want to overload you, but yeah, thanks for tuning in now and in the future. I appreciate it. I think I'll probably lose some subscribers. Talk about math. Oh no. I think next Halloween, I'll just dress up as a math nerd. I think that's going to be real scary for people. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have some happy holidays. Try to stay out of trouble. And hey, do some math.